I got it.
Coaxial cable, like at our house.
See it, because the print's so small.
Right, it's now live.
Absolutely. Printing.
Orange is right.
Community room out back. Come right in the. Yeah, and just follow the Warren back through. Ancient Baghdad to get here.
How are you?
All right, bye. Where's the meeting? But he wasn't sure how to get it, so it's a good thing I called. See? Is that the epitome of efficiency or what?
You summon. How you doing, Walt?
Very well, thanks.
So nice to see you in the person.
I know.
I didn't notice that I was on the agenda formally.
There's a revised agenda back.
Oh.
There are agendas on the back too. You're right. You're probably not.
I think I'll figure that one out. Well, maybe you can.
Wow. We'll call the meeting to order. Cupertino says it's 6:06. That's what that clock. Okay, are there adjustments to the agenda?
Yes, I have
Okay.
one. I would like to add. Permission to apply.
And I'd like to add that letter from Milton.
Got Andrews.
That was the name of it.
We were copied.
Yeah, but it was addressed.
No. I was glad when I saw it was to you, because I said, I'm not gonna have anything to do with
I
it.
think it was the name, you guys were CC.
Yeah, we were.
So I would say no. But I keep it here.
All right, their public comment for items not on the agenda. Hearing none, we shall move on to approval of the minutes of June 1st. June 1st, June 3rd.
Yeah. May 25th, June 1st, June 3rd, June 8th.
Oh, let's see, May 20th.
I don't have the name.
I didn't send you names, so we'll look at it until next.
Maybe you did,
I thought I did, but.
you might have, I just.
That looked familiar.
No, but I'm ready to approve them. Because they're simple and short. But I do have, we take them up separately because I have some issues with one.
Yeah, I want to make sure we've got the right.
Yeah, I think so. So I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of May 25th, revision 1.
Second motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? We don't have to do
Oh,
roll
that's
calls
right.
anymore, right? We're back to semi-normal. June 1st. Now, I made a late change to June 1st.
Yeah,
I
so-
think everybody got that.
But I changed that, I didn't send it out, but I did change it on there.
But I have some comments on that. First of all, I think this is revision 1.
On June 1st,
Yeah, I believe we had revision 0 that you sent out earlier. I don't mean to be picky, but we've had so much trouble having the.
June 1st, I sent out another.
Yeah,
Right,
I
and
have
it says-
it.
one.
And it says revision 0. Oh,
You're looking at the third first.
okay, I'm sorry. I'm good with that one.
Okay.
I have an issue.
Third.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I had, on talking about the first area on page 3, 4. There's just some alignment issues. If you see the line at the bottom, it says Kevin Gordon. So most of the concerns. So the desk file, and he said, are you with me?
Yes, I see that, yep.
On the very last line, Spirit Audio and Rights all agreed that they supported. There's an extra there.
Was that corrected in revision 1?
That's my revision 1.
That's your revision 1, okay. I don't have revision 1 here, I just have revision 6, but I'll fix those.
So I would move that we approve the first minutes with those amendments.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
One.
June 3rd.
I'm referring to with the revision. Still says 0.
Zero.
Yeah. Have the same issue.
Didn't that get up to 2?
I don't know.
I don't know, I got 0. Pick it up to 2. We're.
Yeah.
There was 0, then there were John's edits, which would have kicked it to 1,
Right.
and I wasn't aware of another one.
Maybe it was just one. All I can say, it's been election week and Phil's been out. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
What version do you have?
I didn't print them out for me. I did revise what John said.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
on the 8th, you sent me something else. So I revised what John sent, but if you want to wait, I can resend them to you and we can approve them next time.
Well, I'd like to discuss. I still have a problem.
Is there a motion?
Nope, but I'm ready to move. We approve the June 3rd minute. We revision 1.
Second it for discussion.
Sure. Go ahead.
I still have an issue with, there's a couple of alignment issues, like I pointed out. But I still have an issue with Article 10. You said some spoke in support of this article, but some spoke against. I think it should reflect that, and I don't see that unless I'm missing it. When I first responded to you, you would pick 2 or 3 people and put their
Right, and
comments.
I thought I changed to exactly what you said.
I don't think so, because I said I would suggest that you, unless we're gonna do a transcript, which I don't think we should do,
Right?
then I think you should simply say some spoke in support of this article and some spoke against it. But you put some spoke in support, but you didn't put some spoke against it, and maybe that's my fault.
Maybe this is revision then.
No, I think,
There, because I saw your inputs before, also, where you had recommended to do that.
well, I think she did change most everything. I think it's just a matter of simply saying some spoke in support of this article and some spoke against it.
Did she delete all the other?
Yeah, well, with the
Maybe
exception of
Maybe
one,
I deleted it maybe I added it and then deleted too much.
I don't know,
I don't know.
because there are definitely people who spoke against it. I think
Right.
that should be
And I can
reflected.
remember writing
Well, it's not there now, then, unless I'm missing it.
that.
No, it's not there.
And I also, again, and maybe I didn't strike it, but there's a comment attributed to Penny Alley, and again, I don't think, unless we're gonna transcribe it.
I know, I thought I took that
I
all
don't think
out,
we should
what you said.
attribute anybody to, any individual's comments should be cited why other individuals aren't.
Yep. So do you want me to resend those and we can approve those next time?
I think that's probably a good idea.
That's not trans.
No, but it can be, you know, when you're taking minutes, having done it many, many times, I mean, the minute taker can pick and choose.
Right.
The next thing you know, it's,
Then we get to weigh in.
not the
Since you were
Terry.
at that meeting, you probably should. take a look.
I will. I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of June 8th, revision 0.
Motion.
Can you second?
Abstain.
June 8th. You mean June 3rd?
On June 8th, your executive session.
Okay.
Oh, the,
CEO executive session.
The one Jim,
the one. Right. Second.
uh,
All in favor? Aye.
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 I abstain.
not that bad.
All right. I was more able than I expected.
Yeah.
Department head monthly reports. Amy's not here. Brian's not here. That's too bad. Comments, questions? Ambulance, and or fire?
I just have one, I don't have an ambulance fire, I just have one comment on Terry's town administrator's report.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's just, it's very minor, but just Terry, I assume you're referring to Bill Napal, not Bill Nagel.
Oh, you know, I keep calling him that, even though I know it's not his name, yes, yes. that's
And
what-
I think I can actually spell it. N-A-J.
It's funny, when I think of him, that's what I think, and I know it's wrong, I'm sorry.
Have we confirmed, is he still engaged with McKed? Or at least our piece of northern borders?
Depends on how you define engaged. I think he's still technically still their employee. I believe he retires at the end of June.
Okay.
But I called him. I finally did get him to call me back. And he said that he would call Terry right away, and Terry never heard from him. So Terry ended up dealing with Northern Borders herself. So actually, while we're on this, if we get a bill from McKeith for $5,000, I would ask Terry not to pay it
Oh, I
until
would
until we discuss
very
about,
highly.
until we have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
Right,
Would you?
I think it's NAJPAUER. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty good.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I think it's Russian.
Okay, I have a comment, two comments about ambulance, well, one about ambulance. The call rate through the first 5 months would bring us in at a pretty much exactly, if it's all run rate, exactly where we were last year. I think Amy would say she expects more in the summer than the year to date, which would get us closer to the record-setting year of 2019. So, something to watch for. Our treasurer's report, what do we do with the finances?
I do a finance report,
Right.
but I honestly would like to leave it till next meeting, because I did it over the weekend, and Monday, we got ready for the election too, so we had the election, and Bill's been out, so I
Right.
haven't had a chance to really go over it like I would like to.
Very good. That's cool. Does anybody know what the problem was with the chief's laptop?
He's fine.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Pilot error?
Yes.
UBD, user brain damage. It's a technical term. EMA director's report. Betty, any comments?
No.
All right, good. Then we'll probably accept
I
your
can't
report as.
remember what I wrote on it.
Accepted.
It's good.
What am I missing? Is there a
I put a
assessor's
plumbing,
report?
no, but I put, they haven't been in, but I put a plumbing one
I
on
saw
the
that.
table. Did you get them?
So Terry's catching up.
Yes, he is.
Can I ask why he submitted a plumbing report but not a CEO report, or did you do this also?
He handed me a paper, like Blair Terry always do, and I typed it up. I don't think he's done any code enforcement.
Well, he's been dealing with permits.
They've been all, it's been all plumbing.
Really?
There's some code enforcement things pending from most. Caught up.
Mostly.
I think he has done something, because I overheard him talking to somebody one day. But it's
Yeah,
okay.
that's
I mean,
all-
he's
that's
trying
all
his
he-
best, and he's got
yeah,
a
that's all.
full-time job, and he comes in, he's helping us out. I'm not trying to put the pressure on, believe me. The last thing I want him to do is walk away.
That's right, yeah. No, that's, his main focus has been plumbing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest.
Let's chat up Dave.
He has some, and yeah,
Well, I'm supposed to text him when we're ready, and he doesn't get home until a little after 6. So I told him that I thought we could take Andrew up or something else out of order, and
Okay.
we could text him. at the end of the meeting.
All right,
So
so let's,
he could get home, get something to eat.
fine.
Yeah.
So let's do the MMA webinar regarding ARPA funds and the grant request.
Well, again,
That would be you.
I'm not real prepared for this. It was interesting. We do have a DUNS number and we do have a SNAPS number, so we're ahead of the game on that. It did seem like, and John watched it too, it did seem like there's going to be a lot of different things we could do. But yet it's kind of rigid, but what you can do. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, and particularly if you're not in a, I can't remember the title they use, but HUD,
Qualified census.
Qualified Census District, which basically you get a lot of audit. And nowhere in Knox, Cumberland, York, or any of those districts. They're all, the few that are in Maine are in Washington, of course, they're pretty scattered, but. So that makes it a little more complicated because you got to justify it. But the takeaway that I had from watching it was that unlike the CARES Act, it's, this, and maybe it's only because I misunderstood it. The thought was be strategic, be thoughtful, don't hurry. This is not stimulus. You know, the intent here is not to spend this as quick as you can.
Right, we have to.
You
what
got
is it,
over
20?
2 years to try to, yeah. That was a takeaway that I had. And it is, they kind of talk about the priorities. So, you know, so the first tier, and I don't have them committed to memory, is, you know, ending the pandemic, getting people vaccinated, whatever you can do to stop the spread. The second one was to help people that are, for lack of a better word, economically disadvantaged, that were impacted by the pandemic negatively. I'm going down the list, so to speak. Making up any lost revenue that municipalities or cities experience, but you can't just do it on, say, you can't calculate the ambulance revenue loss. It's a complicated formula, and you got to look at your revenue across the board. So that was interesting. I thought, because I thought you could just sort of
And they're gonna have a worksheet, but I haven't seen it come out
Right.
yet.
to calculate that. The MMA folks did say that they felt that they haven't finalized this, but their original feeling is that you will need town meeting approval. The question I had was what level of detail? Can we just write a broad article that says the town meeting gives the selectmen to expend this money as they deem advisable, or do we have, how specific do we need to be? You know, or is it somewhere in the middle of those two? trying to think of the takeaways from it. It is available on their website. You can go back and watch it. It was pretty good. The lady who did most of the presenting was worked for the National League of Cities and heavily involved in helping steer this bill to actually money towards cities and municipalities who were frankly cut right out of the CARES Act. They didn't get any money from that to speak of them. So she was pretty good. Couple things that I found, a couple things that they mentioned where she could use money for ventilation systems, and I think of this building. You can use it for little, they didn't expand on it, and there were 180 or 140 people on this webinar, so they didn't get to answer all the questions. I think they had at one point like 80 questions. They didn't obviously get to that, but there was a little bit of a reference to using the money in relation to climate change. So I was sort of thinking of our shortfall or potential shortfall in the road project, but no detail on that at all.
So this is not, or are they expressing that roads, bridges, and internet are priorities?
No, I would say
It was
sewer,
or infrastructure.
it was sewer, water, and broadband were the three infrastructures that were mentioned. And those were sort of down, Lisa,
They are
down the priority list, if you will, sort of.
They're absolutely dead.
Okay,
I
again,
mean,
but-
very good for doing that on top of your head.
but,
You got it basically right. I'm not sure I could, I got a cheat sheet.
but the thing that bothered me the most, and I think we need to push on this, is if you're not in one of those qualified census districts, tracks, then you need to provide more justification for why you're spending the money. And I think there needs to be a process of, and I hate to bring this upon ourselves, because sometimes I think it's better to beg forgiveness and ask permission. But I'd hate to, process to get prior approval for a project, particularly if it's cuspy in terms of its eligibility. I'd hate to go spend the money and then say, oh, that's not eligible, you gotta send it back. So I'm being cautious as I am, but there was little talk about that. So, but there's more guidance to come, and the state needs, since we're non-entitlement cities, there's only 5 or 6 entitlement cities in the whole state, Portland, Bangor, Lewiston. We're not one of those. Our money comes through the state, and the state has to shape that a little bit. So those were the big takeaways I had. I don't know, Terry, if you.
And they had a hearing yesterday,
But that's on the state.
right on getting it.
Right, but that's on the state. The state's getting money, the county's getting money, the entitlement cities are getting money, and then there's just part of money for non-entitlement cities and
That's
towns. And we're in that category.
And are we still 160,000?
They didn't go into that.
That was the initial.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
they just said
Yeah.
whatever it is, you'll get 50% this year and 50% next year.
But it is possible that we could get further money from the state allocation. If the state sub-allocates it to municipalities and cities and towns, so.
If the state sub-allocate us some for our highway,
Potential.
Yeah, I mean, we can make that case like
I know, everybody's after this money. I mean, I'm sure Dorothy can tell you that. Because they got money. So it was interesting, and if you got the time, I'd urge you to watch it. It's about an hour.
it was
an
just
hour
too
and a half.
short. It wasn't
Yeah.
enough to answer all the questions
Right.
people have.
on the MMA website.
I bet I believe it.
John, there were a couple of daycares that had to close, because of quarantine and lost revenue. And salary, employee salaries. Are they eligible for reimbursement for those times that they were shut down because of quarantine? You know?
Yeah, I guess I'll say yes, potentially, if they qualify, if meet all the other factors, whatever those factors may be. And we have
We
to,
don't have those
and we,
factors.
no, and we as a town probably would have to craft that.
They also should have been eligible under the CARES Act. While you made it like that.
Well, they shut down after the CARES Act, ended. They went into quarantine after the CARES Act money was available.
And they're in South Thompson?
Yeah, both of them, the Little Learners and the new one on 131.
I knew the one on 131 had to shut down. I didn't realize Little Learners.
Twice.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's possible. And, you know, it's,
So I thought that was a probability, and I asked them to keep track of their costs and expenses. Just in case that might be a possibility.
Yeah,
But be careful.
but I think the town has to craft its plan on what it wants to do with the money. And that certainly could be something that the town includes in its plan.
But be careful because the dates that it covers are actually not clear to me anymore. Like here, it's funds may cover costs for March 1st, 2021 through December 2024. So I'm still not sure.
Yeah. Well, that's why
Practically the entire thing.
That's why I said possibly, depending on other factors. And dates would be one of those factors.
I still think there's a, particularly for employees, that you have to lay off or close down.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm kind of talking to myself, I'm sorry. There were, I say this only because I have a daughter that owns a business, and there were a couple of different pots of money that were available for loans initially, but if you used them in accordance with certain rules, they became grants. And those rules, I think 80% of the money had to be used for employee-related costs, and that should fit for that small business. They're small businesses, and they should be eligible to cover, you know, any wages that were lost as a result of COVID. But anyway,
That would be the PPP program.
Yeah.
But if you didn't get in on time,
but there were a couple different versions of it.
Needless to say, this is gonna take a lot of thought and a lot of work, and but the biggest takeaway was you don't need to rush on this.
It's not gonna go away if we don't spend it.
It will eventually.
Somebody else isn't gonna
It will,
get it.
it will eventually, but we got a couple of years.
They have to obligate it by the end of 2024, but you can spend it through 2026.
I could have it obligated.
2020.
So that's a fair amount of time.
So we're gonna take bets as to if we have 160,000, how many petitions are we gonna get? Like 1.6 million, maybe? Ideas to spend it. Grant requests.
I got an email from somebody, and then I got an email from Betty.
The same one.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
same email, and the main recovery has some leftover money, it sounds like. And it's the first come, first served basis that if you apply for this, it will cover items that weren't covered by FEMA. More like the plexiglass that we put up that wasn't covered, that would be covered. It still seemed like it was kind of strict, but a lot more lenient than FEMA and a lot more easier reporting. It will cover our Zoom meetings. It's for a year period. And so I started looking at it. There are a couple that I'm not sure they'll be covered, but it doesn't hurt to put them in there. If they don't cover it, they'll reject it, but they might say that it's okay. So I just started looking at what we might find, and
Great.
it's certainly worth trying, and I'm gonna try to get it done tomorrow because it said first come, first served.
Serve, right? Just, she did marching orders.
I'm fine with that. I would urge you just to get it in there, though. Don't polish it, just get it in, because then we might get a placeholder. And
Right,
they'll
I
come
have
back and
I
say.
have to find, I have what, we spent, now I have to find the invoices.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
Yeah.
And I hope to do that tomorrow morning and send it to them, get it in.
FEMA?
We should get a check in a
Short.
couple weeks.
Were there related costs associated with that as well? You know, with remote, home, stuff like that?
Well, mine wouldn't qualify because it was after January. And I don't think anyone else remoted in. Did Owen have a remote in?
She did it.
Yeah, I thought.
You did?
Mo
I'll
did. I
look,
thought
I'll
Mo
look at
did.
that. Yeah, that's a good thing to look for.
So just submit it, they can always deny it.
Right,
Right,
I put yours in too. I mean,
well, they won't, mine was after January 2021,
if that's you personally, you were hired that.
but that's a cutoff, it's a year
But your
period.
position required that.
Right, but it's a year period, they won't cover anything after January 20th, 2021. It's between January 2020, January 2021,
You think, no one's-
that period, but I will look for that, I didn't know. I mean, I printed out a bunch of stuff and looked through, the ambulance UV lamp was denied by FEMA. And Amy wasn't sure why, but, so I put that in and her cabinet for storing supplies was also denied by FEMA, so I threw that in.
Mhm.
The plexiglass sound system for the town meeting.
Yeah.
The girl I talked to said, I don't think that'll be covered, but I figured we'll put it in.
$700.
Really an expense. We wouldn't have incurred it otherwise.
Right, but they don't look at it that logically though, Jim.
All of your PPE equipment that you had to get will be covered too.
Mhm.
A lot of it was covered by FEMA and some.
Oh, so you already got reimbursement?
Oh, you can get it twice?
It specifically says that.
And some was covered by Keep Maine Healthy.
I'm sorry, what?
Some was covered by Keep Maine Healthy. But I did pull up a few that weren't covered and I have them on this slip and I just have to pull the invoices. Has to all be submitted at once in certain order.
Yay. Ooh.
Do we want to try Dave now?
What time is it?
6:30.
I told him I thought it'd be a little later, because I thought we'd deal with him
Okay,
first.
that's fine.
So,
So should we,
it-
we'll skip old business A and, no, unless the tennis court donations, we already know.
yeah, and I'm gonna take a few minutes on B, so if you wanna move to Andrew, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Good evening.
What's the order of that? Revised cost estimates. Got your spreadsheet.
Yeah, I actually forgot to bring the spreadsheet with me, but basically, I've been keeping a private spreadsheet and, thank you. And the way I look at this, unless I'm miscalculating, that with the revised cost estimates and the money extra money that we spend on the revisions, we're we're facing a $27,380 shortfall. And I think before we move ahead further with this, with this project, we need to at least have a plan on how we're gonna address that. And I think there's obviously ways to address it. One is we secure some more funding, or one is we cut, actually three ways. One is we secure some more funding, one is we reduce costs, or a combination of the two. I will say, I did call around, I called the local Maine Road Center, I have a connection up there today. Pete Coughlin, who is their executive director, asking him if, any pots of money out there that he would identify or think about. He said, not really. He did put me in touch with someone at DEP who I wasn't able to get a hold of, who administers some grants that deal with climate change mitigation, but he had no idea if they would cover road projects. But I called her and didn't hear back. So I wasn't real, in talking to him, I didn't feel great about raising money that way. I think, Terry, you talked to Northern Water. Did you tell me that, or I dreamed that?
No, I did talk to them.
And they said
So,
unlikely that they would
Unlikely.
increase the grant.
Did you broach the subject of us paying them back?
yeah,
That's a
Well,
consideration. as we-
yeah, I agree, and I think that's why I think we need to think long and hard before we continue to spend money here if we don't have a plan to to close this. So I guess I'd be interested, particularly since we have Andrew here tonight, hearing, well, and actually 27,000 leaves us with 0 general contingency. I know Andrew has 10% built in on the 2 different projects down from 20, so there's some contingency there, but there's no contingency for non-construction activities. And there's only, in the legal fees, there's only, about $1,700 left. And we don't have the construction easements in place, and that, my guess is that's not gonna be sufficient. So I think in reality, the shortfall is greater than the 27,000. And I don't, I think we need to start really pounding the bushes to see if there's any way we can close this. The Coughlin did mention that possibly the infrastructure bill that's now being talked about at the feds, if it passes, potentially something could filter down to municipalities, but it's more likely going to go to bigger bridge projects on I-10 in Louisiana and that type of stuff. And I'd be very interested in hearing from Andrew, if there are ways to reduce this. My sense is we can't, and I could be wrong, but I think we need to engage with Northern Waters. My sense is they're not gonna let us do one project and not the other. They would probably prorate the grant or something. I don't know. But, so I'm concerned, like you say, that if we, and I don't think we've asked the question, that if we have to bail on this, terminate this project, are we gonna have to pay them back? And if that's the case, I hate to keep spending money.
Is there a reason that we wouldn't go to surplus for something like this? This kind of the kind of contingencies that surplus is for.
I mean, that would be a, I personally wouldn't do that on my own. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I mean, I'd be willing to take it to town meeting, but I question, I mean, we're putting quite a bit of money into this as it is for a small area, as we've been pointed out to us several times. And I rode around on some of our other roads, and Westbrook Street's getting rough. And so
Andrew, how do we cut scope?
That's a challenging.
Always the first place to go,
Yeah, that's a challenging question, definitely. I think the cleanest, quickest would be to eliminate one of these sections, but they're both, it's not gonna solve the solution. I think part of that grant process is to ensure that you have access out to the island away, and these are the 2 areas that are most concerned. The other option, I mentioned it the other day, was to put a temporary measure along the side slopes, reduce the riprap quantity, and try to vegetate the side slopes to save some cost in that line of things. But again, it would be a temporary measure. It wouldn't assure the road would be maintained in catastrophic situations. That's what the riprap's gonna do. It's gonna lock in the road base, lock in the pavement, kind of keep it all in place to prevent the big tides and big storm surges from wiping it out. But we do have some time. The town could then reassess and potentially go back and armor a few of those sections later on after the fact.
Let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
That would be at a significantly higher cost at the same time.
It would, absolutely.
Demobilize,
I was just gonna
recontract.
follow that with that. It will never be any less expensive than doing it simultaneously with the road. In fact, you're gonna have to undo a lot of the work that you do to construct it that way. So it's certainly less than ideal to take that approach with it. In addition, part of our design is been created from the Woods environmental report there. So their recommendations were to armor the road, armor the situation we're building, which allowed us to build the road lower than what they really wanted. They wanted a road that was 3, 4, 5 feet high to accommodate long-term flooding situations. So we took the kind of the common ground of the 2 to 3 foot road height, and then we've chosen to armor the road section, which was one of the recommendations in there. So if we start pulling out the long-term armoring and turn it into vegetation and fabric, I'm not sure that they would be satisfied, they being your grant provider, the northern borders there, may not be acceptable to that. So we have reduced the scope, the length of these sections as much as possible. I understand that it looks like some of the road sections have expanded, but it's just more or less trying to blend the curves together to meet road standards, to design as you're coming down a hill and going back up a hill, there's a certain curvature you have to maintain to make it safe for everybody and to be comfortable. So we've reduced the road length as much as we can. So looking at trying to simply just shorten these sections, I'm not sure we could get any closer. The only thing we could do is see if they would accept a reduced road elevation height. The report, which would deviate against the original design and original reports requiring 2 to 3 feet. We could go back and say, look, we only have a budget, or we can only afford to do 1.5 feet here or 2 feet in this section, and see if they would be receptive to that. But again, it's kind of like getting 75% there and then stopping. It's still not that long-term plan that they had recommended. But I think those are all potential options. None of them are ideal. None of them are as what you would want to see. One of the things I've been doing, I've been talking to a lot of contractors actually this week. Due to projects, we've been sending out projects, road projects, paving projects, kind of all over this area, and we're receiving very few bids. What bids do come in, they are probably 20 to 30% higher than we anticipated for that, which could exactly be the case for this. Try to accommodate inflation, try to accommodate for that. But we've also been hearing that a lot of projects are disappearing from the table right now. So there's websites out there such as like Construction Summary that lists projects that a lot of towns will engage in. The contractors go to these sites to look for them, and those are disappearing. They're drying up. Like right now, there's nothing out there for contractors to bid on. So that's telling me that a lot of projects are being pulled off the table for this year, which is going to do 2 things. Contractors, they're going to have to get competitive again, because the things that do pop up, they're going to want to make sure they keep themselves busy. And we've also seen material prices in some instances start to dip back down a little bit. So whether it coincides with construction slowing down. That being said, I put that on the table when we're talking about pricing is if you time this right and you could get a bid out, which I wouldn't recommend to do it right now. I let this construction season kind of cool down. You could kind of then approach it for the fall here. And if you had something out in that October to December timeframe, then you could start looking at a spring construction or fall construction next year. But it would give you the opportunity to kind of catch the contractors right as they're wrapping things up and already looking for next year.
So the lumber bubble has burst,
Yes.
but the oil bubble is replaced.
It's taken over, and that's where all your piping and couplings and all those things are still creeping out.
In the riprap area. So there's labor, equipment, and granite. What's kind of the split between the contribution of each to overall costs?
Labor's always 2/3 of it. The labor and equipment are 2/3 of the cost. Material costs are not that high when you're dealing with the rock. So the rock removal, the rock placement, it's always labor and equipment that drive those prices. Same thing for most of these things. When you get into construction prices, usually I look at the raw price and I'm doubling or tripling what the raw price of the product is, like a piece of pavement or something like that. By the time you get it placed and equipment's there, it's usually 2 to 3 times.
John?
I have several questions that you may find minutia, but I want to get them out because I don't feel we've had a good opportunity to. But one is you talked about flagging going up. I understand the intersection work would be complicated flagging. The other project, it strikes me, could be done with a light.
Absolutely, yeah.
And are you factoring for a light there, or are you factoring for labor for flagging?
No, so the lighting is always complicated because contractors don't have lights. So they're gonna have to rent them, and they're gonna rent them from the flagging companies that provide the lights.
Yeah.
So Oftentimes, it's a wash, when you start getting
Okay.
into pricing.
Alright.
Because of what they charge, you can reduce the price. The reason the flagging cost went up is because the state has kind of been honestly cracking down on how the flagging has occurred, because there's been a lot of issues. So they're making sure that they have ample flagging everywhere, and they're not letting contracts get by. Contracts have been put on notice. So they're being forced to follow the stringent rules that have been in place for a long time, but they just kind of
Yeah.
get a little lax in
Plus
some of the,
wages are climbing.
and the wages are absolutely fine.
Is it fair to say, I believe it is, that if we didn't tee the intersection and left it the way it is, that would actually increase cost, not decrease? That,
As
with all that
Yes,
paving and
yes.
fill and,
absolutely, if we were to,
Okay.
if we have to impact that intersection no matter what. We're gonna remove that asphalt there, we're
Excuse
gonna.
me, this is Village Road and
Yeah.
Island Road.
Yeah.
Correct, yep, we have to impact that area, we're directly adjacent from that intersection as it currently exists. We're raising that road elevation over 2 feet. So to tie into the existing village road, we have to make a transition and a ramp up to where that road's gonna be placed, finally constructed. So to rebuild the intersection 110 feet wide, that means we would be expanding the road base 110 feet, be expanding the pavement 110 feet. What we've done is we've kind of reduced that.
fine, I just want to confirm that, because some people have said to me, oh, if you wouldn't do that, I said, no, that makes it cheaper.
Yeah. We're trying to save pavement and road
Right.
and building material.
And down the road, it's gonna save paving.
Exactly,
we're not paving
maintenance,
Logan
plowing,
Air-
all that.
Logan Airport out there, we're paving a road, so. On the rip wrapping, I've lived on Swiss Island now, I don't know, almost 30 years, and I have never, and maybe it's just what I've seen, but when violent storms attack, they always seem to attack from the, what is it, the north side, the Camden Hill side. I never see it coming the other way from either Seal Harbor or up in, so, and I think the most vulnerable, it's just my personal opinion, the most vulnerable spot in that road from the south side is right before the bridge where people launch kayaks. That's almost eroded right to the road now. And that's not even in this work area, correct?
Correct,
So,
we're right up to that, yeah.
but up to it. But the most vulnerable spot, I know it's a little higher, but it's very much washed out. There's very little riprap there or anything. So I guess my question is, would it be possible to eliminate the riprap with a fairly high degree of confidence that it wouldn't be under attack, if you will, on that whole south side? And if you look at Cars Beach, that's all pretty well riprapped already. I'm not looking for an answer tonight, just
Yeah.
a thought.
No, I mean, I can offer a suggestion for that. I think that is definitely possible, and if we want to look at those options, we could definitely try to do some value engineering, if you will, for those sections, to try to reduce. There is a lot of runoff for those waves that would have to run through that, but what we've been trying to design for is in the event the road is overtopped. Plain and simple, trying to look at the sea level rise in a storm surge situation. In normal scenarios, yes, I agree 100% that you're not seeing that action you would, but when the water is over the road, it's gonna impact both sides of those side slopes, and by only being able to lock in one side of that gives us the concern that we're gonna stabilize that whole road base, but if we leave one side susceptible to get some of this irregular wave action or flooding, it's gonna give us the opportunity to leave.
Mhm.
That being said, I think we can work on some engineering designs that would try to accommodate. I mean, bottom line comes, if you can build a road and you can get it 85% there or 9% there compared to what we've presented now, and you can get the cost down, I would, recommend you at least evaluate that, or we evaluate that rather than turning the project down, certainly.
And I also noticed that it looked like a little of the riprap on that side was outside of the right of way. And I thought you said last week that there was no work other than the driveway tie-ins outside.
I think that was probably associated with that existing culvert there.
It could be, but
Yeah, just
all of a
take it
sudden,
once.
that's another, I mean,
Yeah.
it was only like.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and then the other question, suggestion I have is actually came from John Coffel. We have some huge granite blocks out back
Mhm.
that the town owns that came from the old bridge. They're sort of been earmarked for rebuilding the landing at some point in the future. But I would urge you to take a look at those to see, and I'm talking huge.
Yeah, yep.
That if they could potentially help reduce costs here by placing them or something in maybe on that south side as opposed to rip wrapping or something, I don't know.
Absolutely, and with that scenario, I would recommend we include allowing the contracts, when you do get to a bid situation, allowing them to come inspect them. So we have our drawing spec'd out, specified all the boulder sizes. They would be able to come and inspect those. They want to use them. Sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it can be more of a hassle, because they have to get in there, get them out, and they might not be readily accessible. Or they just might be too big to transport easily, or they have something in the pit that's just the right size. But absolutely, we've done that in other past projects. We tell them where they're located. I tell them they can use them for free if they want them, and then they can get your bid based on that. Some of them will get creative, and some of them won't want to deal with them.
We had two big mountains of granite. Which
Yeah,
we blasted
absolutely.
when we blasted our foundation. They're called Mount Barbara, and we love.
Definitely. No, we'll put it right in there. We'll get a location. Your contractors will come and inspect them, and we'll let them make the determination if they want to reuse them.
Betty?
I may hate myself for what I'm gonna say, but, so much of this project is public safety. And being able to get people on and off of the island and emergency vehicles. And it's a problem, and it's going to continue to be a problem in the future. We have this nice emergency disaster reserve that, was just approved to put $10,000 back into that. Could that possibly be taken out, and be used to offset some of the increased costs that we could not have anticipated 2 years ago? Just a thought.
Well, so the rule is.
Policy,
That,
not
yeah.
rule,
Is it I think it's a rule. I think it's a law though, regarding use of reserves. That they have to be expended for the purposes for which the reserve account was created to begin with. The reserve account was created to help when we had public safety problems.
Exactly.
So that may work.
Exactly.
So that's
certainly
that's
town-
$15,000 of the 27.
Certainly town meeting could repurpose.
And town meeting
Could
repurpose
repurpose
it, yeah.
that, and the question I think is, could the select board, and are they willing to, repurpose that?
Those
Right.
emergency.
But I know.
I'd like to also mention, talking, utilizing, we'll have, I would say 50 to 100 feet of guard
Okay,
that we
yeah,
also took away when we redid the bridge. That's also back in our rail and posts.
it's in decent shape then, yeah, I mean, that's $35-40 a linear foot, so.
Yep.
Yep, they could pick that up and you'll save half those costs, basically, because they'll be able to reinstall that.
Okay, all right, so let's not try to solve all the
Right.
problems here tonight, but, so permit application and bid process. We, whether, one or the other in the short term. Jan?
I just want to comment, this project has been underway for probably 2 years. The reason this project is $27,000 over is because we have created it. We have run those costs out. The we is the community. Some for very good reasons, but the bottom line is the longer we delay this, the higher those costs are going to continue to go up. And I think if this project is really going to ever happen, we need to make a commitment to it. Yes, I understand that there's a cost overrun. Does the town want to do this or not? The bottom line is that the town's only going to pay right now, is it less than $100,000? Because we've got this huge grant of almost $400,000. If the grant goes away and we end up having to pay back the grant and still have nothing done on the road other than the engineering, it sounds like a big dig at Boston. I mean, oh my gosh, we've got an opportunity here that we're so close, we can't quite get there. And although I grant $27,000 is a lot of money, You know, we're about ready to spend $50,000 on a ventilation system for a firehouse that hasn't had a ventilation system in it for the last 10 years, and suddenly we think it's an emergency to put it in. So I'm just speaking here, but,
I always like his
and
idea.
I know I'm a lame duck. So part of my concern is that I'm gonna go away and this thing.
You don't have to answer.
That's right. Or I don't see it to come to fruition either.
I'm not sure what it means answering for a project. I really hope to Jan's point is that there's a commitment on the part of the select board, present and future, to do this project and do it as soon as possible, not bail on the project. Full disclosure, Mo and I live on Spruce Head Island. In 2 years, not 30. You've taken into consideration also the impact on the town of losing access to the island for things like Atwood and the co-op and the balloons. I mean, what's the negative impact, if any, on the town, losing the kind of revenue that's associated with 3 of the largest companies in the town? So, you know, there are all sorts of impacts, and I hope there's a commitment on the part of the board to go ahead.
Well, I think there is definitely a commitment on everyone's part to try to do this project. I am concerned that the costs that we're talking about are theoretical. Is there an outline from Andrew about the specifics of the cost estimate at this point? And if so, could you pass it out?
Yeah, absolutely. I've provided a cost estimate for the project that outlines the areas.
Well, we don't have it. And I honestly believe that it will be subject strictly to contractor numbers. We're talking theory here. And my own experience is that when you're trying to estimate things, you really have to consider the unknowns. And you have to consider the state of the plan, which I don't think they're actually as helpful as they could be for a contractor looking particularly at the section of the road, armoring the road, which is there's really no detail, Andrew, of how much work they have to do, how deep is it, how wide is it. It's very sketchy at this point. They will not be able to identify, they can't do takeoffs from the plans.
I disagree. I've been doing this over 20 years, and we built projects and roads and plans using just what we put forward, quite honestly. So these are something that we've created specifically for this project, something that we've used for over 20 years, kind of working through these.
Contractors.
Yeah, we work with a lot of contractors. They understand what we do, and I think I'm confident in the plans that we present.
Okay, well, I'm glad. It took me a while to understand the fabric under it's a very expensive process of armoring these. It's removing all the existing riprap and placing large stone and basically building a wall with excavators. Is that correct?
Yep, that's how riprap and stabilization works. You clear out all the material. You have to do that anyways to make a stable road base, because you have to have your gravel draining. So you clear out your entire section. You place your big keystone boulders along the edges, and you fill in the gap between the middle. And you go up the next course. You place the next stone and riprap along the edge, and you fill in between based on our standard detail. And you do that all the way up to the road surface. And in the middle of all that, while you're placing and building the material back up, you actually wrap the fabric as you're placing it. So you place the fabric down on the keystone, and you wrap it back up in between the layers that we're trying to protect and kind of contain within that.
I think it's a good detail, but
Andrew,
like you said,
that's what
there
you're,
are.
Yeah, yes.
so, because I was gonna say, I don't have any more detail than that.
Yeah, no, so I just have the summary there. So I have a spreadsheet that I constructed. I don't just pull those numbers out of the air. We create a spreadsheet that has well, it's
Well, we don't either.
there's a, so
We have a summary.
How are we making a decision?
So
if the public-
We're relying on our engineer.
So generally speaking, when, in the past, when I work with towns, we provide the estimate, we don't provide the full
Right.
detail of things. Because when you look at a spreadsheet, there's a lot of things that go into the spreadsheet that aren't perceived or easy to understand what we've done with that. So if we apply a $42 unit price to something, it's hard to decipher exactly what that costs because we may be carrying costs for an item such as removing gravel there, and might also be including it in another item such as cutting material or an excavator or something like that. So it's hard to decipher. So when you provide that level of detail, it's almost impossible for somebody to look at it and go through and say, okay, well, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right.
You don't have the.
You know, so it kind of, it breaks it all up and it's difficult.
Is that the newest?
Yeah, it's right here. I
Yeah,
mean,
we have the summary, yeah.
we can give it to you right now.
The board did.
I don't like to look at stuff, in a minute. I like to have it sent out, prepared.
John,
put on the website.
nobody ever asked for it or something. It's not we're trying to hide it.
Well, there's been a lot of questions that weren't asked about, but
If the board would love that spreadsheet, I'll gladly share any of that spreadsheet.
No, I hired an expert firm with an expert, highly experienced professional to give me my opinion on these subjects. I mean, if this were Gusco coming in with computer stuff, I'd know a lot, and I'd put him under the microscope. But when I hire an expert about something with in a field that I don't know anything about, I trust the expert.
And I think candidly, we're not gonna fully understand the cost until we have a bid.
Real bid.
You know, we're gonna lay something out there. We're not really gonna know what this is gonna cost. We're contractors.
Which is what happened when we did this expansion to this building.
And that's why
Same
every
thing
bid
happened.
package says, the last line is the town reserves the right to reject any and all bids.
Right. That's right.
You don't have a number until then.
we've been underestimating the cost since the beginning. And we may still be underestimating.
I don't.
I beg to differ with you on that.
Yeah, I don't know why you think that.
It's empirical.
I don't think it's empirical. What's empirical is that had we done this last year, the bulk of that $27,000 overage would not have occurred, in my opinion. And I think that's empirical, since, but, you know, the purpose of tonight is, John, is not for you and I to debate yet again.
In order to move this along, according to the contract, the next step is permitting.
Permitting, that's
Okay.
essential.
And you
yes.
urged us to keep moving forward with that, because that takes a
Absolutely.
long time, and even if we want to bid, I talked to a vice president of a big local contractor here, I don't want to mention
Yep.
names, he kind of, who I know very well, he kind of agreed with you wholeheartedly. He said December, January, you said November, December.
Yep.
Close enough, but, the permitting, you don't has the permitting estimate in the original contract was 5 to
Yes,
3,500 to 4,000. That has not changed, correct?
not changed a bit. No, we've actually started the process as we've gone through the 75% to get there. So we have a portion of that we've already begun.
Mhm.
We just need the goal to kind of finish that up because we had to try to strategize and get things ready so that we weren't waiting till the last minute. So we have started that process, but no, the cost hasn't changed.
But in addition to that, there'll be some more time from you to shepherd the
Yes,
permitting process.
yes.
Idea?
I bet we're talking about a couple $1,000, maybe $2,000.
But we're not talking 20.
No, to finish the permits, to just submit them, and then we can reassess when you want to send the bids out. Once we get the permits finished, finalized and submitted, which we could have done as quickly as a couple of weeks. It's just a lot of the paperwork and tightening up the details and stuff like that, which again, most of it's already been done. And we just want to be able to submit that off, and then we'll have it takes 30 days to review the permit once DEP receives it. So basically now they've all been sitting on their desk for 30 days before you get a letter of acceptance. And then they have 120 days to approve the permit as submitted. And they've been taking the full time to review permits lately because they are so overwhelmed and understaffed right now. So you're looking at a 3 to 5 month process just to do that. What we traditionally do is after you go through the initial round of review with DEP, which happens about 60 to 90 days into the process, we'll understand if there's gonna be any impacts to the project where they're gonna require us to change things or adjust things. Oftentimes they don't have any substantial changes, it's minor things back and forth. And at that point in time, then I would think that we could come up with plans that would be suitable for construction after we've gotten through that initial review by DEP in about 90 days or so. And then you can make that determination if you want to proceed, finalize the plans to 100% and send it out to contractors at a kind of predetermined time. But it would at least buy you, 2 months, 3 months of time before we have to go to that next step, quite honestly.
That's, I'd like to proceed on that. I'd like to proceed with the permitting and then take a couple of months to try to see if we can find some money somewhere, and if Andrew can perhaps find some places to reduce costs. I think that's a reasonable, and delay the bidding until, Christmas or something.
Yeah.
That could conform to your recommendation, yes?
Absolutely.
Hello,
Hi, I'm Julia.
hi Julia.
I'm Julia O'Brien, yes. A question vis-a-vis the permitting, and the value engineering. I'm not familiar with state and natural resource permitting, but, would you be permitting all the riprap? And then if you did value engineering, is there, and say 50 feet made sense to do a vegetative solution instead, is there a process for amending that readily? Or is that a long-term sort of thing again? In other words, how significantly are you locked in by the plans you submit for the permit?
Yeah, so the actual application would include the riprap, and that's the most impactful to the environment, if you will. So we kind of take that. That's a bad choice of words because it's stabilizing and harmful, but DEP is never going to be, if we come up with a determination as engineers, as designers, to switch riprap to vegetation, it's as simple as we could actually make that construction adjustment. We could do it in the field, make the adjustment at that point in time, and then we can simply send them a little amendment afterwards that they could see and review and make sure. So because we're starting with the riprap, if we were to do it in reverse and take vegetation and then try to add riprap to it at a later date, we'd have to go back through the process as an amendment, and it would take much longer months of time to review those impacts. So we always try to start with the riprap, and again, because their level of review, they're going to actually closely analyze all this and make sure it meets their standards and requirements. They want vegetation wherever you can put vegetation. They want trees and plants wherever you can put them. So they're going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that we've done it appropriately, and we can, present to them enough evidence on why we need to build a road like this, and why we need to fill the wetlands, and why we need to put riprap along.
It is my sense that increasingly the softer vegetative solution is the preferred solution for permitting.
Yes,
Or is-
generally speaking, absolutely. They would like that in certain circumstances when we're dealing with sea level rise and straight ocean, and stabilizing roads for emergency purposes and whatnot and access. They will allow, and they actually recommend you put the long-term riprap in there. But in other situations, such even on shorelines, they'll require you to put, the riprap up close, and then you put a vegetative buffer behind it to kind of minimize the riprap you use. But we don't have that circumstance.
You might on the opening side.
Right, if the town wanted to acquire land and kind of treat it like that, then we could push those slopes back and get that run up to it, yes.
Okay.
My
Marching
sense
orders?
is, my sense is we don't need a motion because we're not changing.
We're not changing anything.
anything at this point. We may change it in the future. I would like request that we urge Terry to have a discussion with Northern Borders, that if we do have to bail on this, what are we on the hook for? I'd like to know that. Bail's a bad choice of word.
Maybe you can get Bill to help you out, and then that way,
Maybe if I spell his name right.
spell his name right, and also, Somebody's gonna earn his fee.
I think Bill might have retired.
At the end of
End
June.
of June, I believe. Maybe left early.
But some at this table would suggest that he retired on the job where we were concerned. But, okay,
I wanted to let you know that Dave Marquis is president.
I was just about to, I didn't know whether it was Dave Martucci or Jeff Northbridge, actually. Yours is the same. Dave, are you there?
I'm here.
So I'm Walter Wrights, Chair of the Select Board. Next to me is Jan Gaudio, soon to be an ex-member of the Select Board. And we'll miss him dearly. And John Spear is out of your line of sight, but you know him, I guess, so.
I heard his voice.
Thanks for being with us tonight, and thanks for, excuse me, Dave. Andrew, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Here's a set of plans.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Andrew.
Dave is going to be our moderator for Tuesday night.
Assuming he gets elected.
Assuming four people, you have 4 votes now, vote for him. So thank you for that, and
My pleasure.
you have an opening statement for us, or do you want us to inquisition you?
Well, I sent a few ideas to John about procedure. I follow the main moderator's manual, and generally, unless there's an objection, I'll start the meeting by saying that I make the assumption that everybody can read, and all I'm going to read is the article. And if there's any detail following that, they can read that themselves. That's how I generally do it. If that's not okay with you guys, I can read everything, but I mean, that's up to you.
No, that's fine.
So does that mean that you wouldn't, most of our articles, the funding articles will define the source of the funds?
Right. Well, everything in your funding articles seems to have a breakdown by category, by appropriation, and that kind of thing. And I mean, it's a lot to read, but I don't mind reading it all. But it's just that in the interest of having a very quick meeting, often when I do it here in Washington, nobody objects when I say, I'm only going to read the article, and you guys, I assume, can read all the details. But if you want me to read everything, I'm more than happy to do that.
I don't have a strong opinion. I just wanted to know.
As long as he reads the articles, that's fine.
Yep.
And if the meeting objects, then.
If the meeting objects, I'll read whatever they want me to read.
Right.
It's up to the meeting. I mean, the way these kinds of things work is that what I will say is without objection. And if somebody makes an objection, then obviously we have to deal with that. And the only time that's ever happened to me was on a controversial article where the detail contained, I don't know, it was like 8 or 9 paragraphs of material. And I ended up reading it all, but whatever the meeting wants me to do, I'll do. But that's generally what I offer as a way to, make the meeting go a little quicker.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a comment on Article 2. Dave, on Article 2, it says to elect by written ballot 1 select board member, 1 assessor, and 1 overseer of the poor for a term until town meeting 2024. You probably don't know this, but South Thomaston, I think, is one of 2 towns in the state of Maine that does what's known as an alternative nomination process. It's allowed us to. So we do have 1 nominee for that position, and the nomination period has closed. There's a tendency, if someone wants to have a write-in candidate, they tend to stand up on town meeting floor and say, I'd like to nominate so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
Which technically, under the statute we're guided under is the nomination period's already closed. So in the past, Mike Mayo has suggested that you can urge someone to write in a candidate, but you can't nominate. That's
Right.
happened already. So
Yeah.
Nominate is a forbidden word in South Thompson's town meeting.
I'm a little bit familiar with those rules, so that's not a
Okay.
problem.
I just didn't know if you knew that I think it's New Sharon and South Thomaston and maybe one other town that has that process.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard about it. So the way I understand what you just said is that the nominee will be announced, and it will be announced that the nominations have closed. And if anybody wants to vote for somebody else, they need to do it as a write-in.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I also assume that you'll give me all that information before the meeting so I can read it correctly.
Well, I understand Terry will have ballots that have the candidate's name plus a blank spot for a write-in name.
Right.
Perfect. Perfect.
Questions?
Do we want to advise him of any articles we anticipate as landmines in this?
Well, yeah, I think Articles 10, 11, and 12 are going to generate significant amount of discussion and debate.
Okay, and these are, let's see. Oh, this is about the former school, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's understandable.
Yeah. I think you probably might anticipate some proposed amendments that you're gonna have to probably rule on.
Okay.
I think that's fair to say.
Announced.
Whether or not they're, allowable or not, and then, of course, the meeting, and as you know, can overturn your ruling, but.
You broke up just a little bit, so I'm not 100% sure what you just said. If you could repeat that, I'd appreciate it.
Town meeting can appeal your ruling and then override you.
Right, I understand. Well, whenever a moderator makes a ruling, the meeting has the opportunity to vote whether I'm right or wrong, and if they vote that I'm wrong, then we do whatever it is that I said was not correct. So that's not a big deal. I mean, I've never had that happen, but I understand that can happen. So.
I suspect there might also be some number of questions about the ordinances that are, especially the ones that aren't going to be in the, that aren't printed already. I leave it to you to use your best judgment in handling that, because you're going to get, I think I can anticipate you're going to get some questions that people who should have read the ordinances and digested them. And so they'll tax your patience.
Well, that's pretty straightforward. Usually if a question about something like that comes up, I will usually defer it to whoever is the authority on that subject. And whoever, generally that's in an ordinance situation, that's generally whoever drafted it or was responsible for the committee or whatever that situation was that created it. If it came from a citizen group, then that group would have to do the explaining. I obviously have not read all these ordinances, so I'm not going to know too much about them, but like I said, it isn't my.
Hey, Dave, the expert is going to be in the room and might even be sitting next to you at the table by the time we come to that.
Okay, well, that will be perfect.
One other thing I'd like to point out is, as you know, I think you know, the warrant that went out, that was mailed out in the town report was a draft.
Right.
We're changing fiscal years here and COVID and all that. The
Oh.
final warrant that I believe Terry sent you includes Articles 35 and 36 that were not in the draft that went out to all the citizens, mailed out in the town report. So I just wanted to sort of forewarn you, in case there's any confusion about that. They're in the posted warrant, of course, but they're not in the warrant that went out in the town report. And a lot of people probably traditionally come to town meeting with their town report in hand, thinking that, and typically it is, the warrant. But that's not the case this year. And also, I think I might make a motion to move Article 35 and 36 out of order, because I think it's an important discussion for the town to have, and to bring it up after the Article 12.
Okay, so,
Meetings dwindle by the end.
yeah, I understand completely. The process for doing that is very straightforward. So at that point, someone needs to make a motion to take those out of order, and we'll handle that. As long as the body is willing to do that, it's not a problem.
Second.
Okay. So that doesn't have to. It's like he
All right,
Could you tell the meeting what 35 and 36?
Article 35, it will ask the town to instruct the select board to pursue an interlocal agreement with Camden, Rockport, Thomaston, and the other towns in Midcoast that are forming the Midcoast Development Corporation for purposes of getting fiber to everybody's house. I mean, that's the grandiose description of and Article 36 funds us with $5,000 to join the feasibility study regarding fiber to the house.
With the funds coming from federal.
With the funds coming from ARPA. All right. So Dave, any questions you have before you go off to?
No, I've read through the warrant. Seems pretty straightforward. I do have the copy with those two extra articles on it, so, you know, I'm a little bit familiar with what it is. I just, the only thing I'll need is, if you're gonna do any, awards or anything like that, and when you wanna do those, you'll need to let me know ahead of time, you know, if anything like that's gonna go down. But other than that, I mean, it looks like a pretty straightforward warrant, and I don't anticipate too much trouble. Like you said, there's gonna be some questions that will generate debate. You know, but that's always to be expected, so I don't think it's gonna be any problem.
Great. All right, thank you very much. We'll see you Tuesday at the airport.
You bet. One quick question. How early do you guys get there to set up? I would like to get there beforehand to get comfortable with the setup and make sure everything is running smoothly, so.
I was hoping to close the office at 5.
So you're here between 5 and 6.
I'd probably go there, leave here, take Maggie home and go there.
So certainly by 6 o'clock, somebody will
Okay.
decide, yeah.
So I'll plan to be there at 6 so that we can make sure everything's gonna run smooth. All right. All right, I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks. Good luck in your election.
Take care, bye-bye.
Martucci?
Yeah.
Martucci. MARTUCCI, I do, as I recall.
That's correct.
I can do NAPOW, but I can't do much.
Suggested, could there be a short handout sheet to give to people who come to the town meeting? It just says, here are the changes made in the warrant since we packaged it up and mailed it out.
Well, we made 100
Yeah,
copies of the new warrant, right?
Yeah.
Just hand out a new warrant.
But you could staple a little thing on it that says,
People who carefully read that booklet could then quickly go to the changes instead of saying they're in here somewhere.
couldn't we just put a little thing on there that says Articles 35 and 36 were not
When you
included
talked
in.
about changes
Or even highlight it.
Couldn't we put just a little clip-on note at the top that says Articles 35 and 36 were not in draft warrant in town report?
But anything else that was significant that you had?
There was nothing else. That was it.
Okay, okay,
We added 2 articles.
okay, yeah,
Thank you, Sandra.
thank you.
Now that you've got them all stapled and stacked and ready. Sorry.
Loose piece of paper.
All right, Cliff, Mid-Coast Coalition update.
You know, do you mind if I just stand up and I can see
I know.
everybody behind?
So neither Ann or Lynn are
No.
here, correct? Okay.
So my name is Cliff Dashow. I live on Sprucehead Island. I was appointed South Thomaston representative to the newly born Mid-Coast Internet Coalition. And the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition's purpose is to develop a municipally owned broadband utility, not-for-profit 501c3 company that will develop fiber optic internet availability to every home in the communities that are participating. There are 10 communities that are participating. It's being led by Camden, Rockport, eventually with Rockland, Thomaston, and then surrounding communities with the exception of Hope and Lincolnville that had already made pre-existing arrangements. So this is a group that has come together rather spontaneously, has worked out a proposal, and this will be Articles 35 and 36 on the warrant to allow South Thomaston, the Select Board, to decide whether or not to participate in this 10-community interlocal agreement. The interlocal agreement was approved in the recent election on Tuesday by Rockport and Camden. Thomaston agreed to allow its Select Board to decide whether to participate in the interlocal agreement. The Internet Coalition, the main Internet Coalition, made a presentation to the Knox County Commissioner Tuesday. It was a 20-minute presentation, really outlining the case for doing a community not-for-profit broadband utility and defining several use cases, such as education. I spoke about healthcare, distance health for a decade or so. We talked about industry and the economic basis of it. So it was presented really as more of an informational item to the commissioners. There is the underlying hope that Knox County will commit some of the Rescue Act funds to the Internet Coalition. There was no decision requested, no decision was made. It was really an informational meeting more than anything else. And as Select Board has identified, 35 and 36 on the warrant will give our Select Board the opportunity to commit to joining the interlocal agreement as well. So that's pretty good.
Thank you, Cliff, for all the participation you've done with those folks up until now. Have you going to have a meeting with your 2 new colleagues?
Sure, I just have to figure out how to do that. We have to, because it obviously has to be part of the open meetings. So we have to schedule it and agenda it and figure out. One of our members is still in Boston, so we're going to do it.
Right.
We're going to Zoomify it.
Terry should be able to help you.
Yeah.
Not that she needs one more thing to do, but
Can I do it on my own Zoom account, or does it have to be yours? Because I have a Zoom account. I can do it on.
So he can't
I
go on
would,
his.
yeah.
As long as we publish the access
Yep.
to it.
Yeah, but then everybody have access to your.
But it's only for that one meeting.
Okay.
He can do to everybody.
That's right.
Very good. Keep them in the waiting room.
With a hood over their head.
I attended the Zoom County Commissioners meeting by Zoom on
Tuesday.
Tuesday. But I had to leave just as our county commissioner, who's in the audience, who represents South Thomas as well as Rockland, started to speak, because I had to be at the tennis court for another meeting. And I was, since she's here and we're talking about this, I'd be interested in her opinion about what happened after I left. Because the initial request from the Mid-Coast Internet Coalition was $7.7 million from the Knox County Rescue Funds, which was the entire amount that they had.
Right.
And then all of a sudden on Tuesday, that changed to $4 million.
Well,
and so I'd be interested in Dorothy's, well, and Cliff.
let me just make one quick comment just on where the coalition is on that. There are no figures. There's no pro forma. There's no business plan. None of this has been created. The coalition now, having funding, is going to engage a consultant called Axios, who will generate the pro forma and the business plan. So we actually have some real numbers. Right now, it's a lot of hand waving.
Right, I understand that. I still would be interested.
Yeah. No, but I just wanted to make that real clear.
When have we not been interested to hear from Dora?
And I'm not talking, Reader's Digest version is fine. I'm not so sure.
John and I go back. I've learned to take views from John. Okay, I'm gonna speak I'm not speaking for the commission, but I will say that it's my belief at this point. John did a wonderful job of listing in the order that it is listed every single time I've ever seen it written, the priorities for how we spend the money. I won't go again to this brevity, but I will point out one more time that the very last item on allowable expenses for the American Rescue Plan is in fact, the last of the 5 is water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, and the last of those is broadband access. The county, and I admit it, we don't do a very good job of promoting what we're doing, but I will say, we have lots of needs, not the least of which is a 30-year-old jail that's been under the thumb of the Board of Corrections for the last 20 years, and is in desperate need of a lot of work. We're down at this point. Well, I would tell you across the board, the pandemic has seriously affected emotionally and every other way. Stress on the sheriff's department, both patrol and corrections. We're down 9 corrections officers in jail right now. We're already trying to get premium paid for just to retain the corrections officers we have. We are in an unusual position with the sheriff's department, with the DA's office, with the court system, with EMA to actually access what is, well, EMA, of course, has a huge involvement in supporting the public health response from the pandemic. A large portion of county government actually has direct access to those impacted by the negative economic impacts. It's premium pay for essential workers we have access to, and actually we have a sewer thing that needs to be coming out of the jail. So the short form, I can stop now, is I, at this point, don't see 7.7 million, our entire allocation, going to setting up a broadband system. I'm not sure that there's $4 million. And I think that that's the short form of what I said is, and most importantly, well, which John brought up, which is we have to go slow. We've barely even gotten the money, and to start claiming bits. I gotta tell you, Mid-Coast Internet Coalition has done one of the most spectacular lobbying efforts I've seen in the state of Maine. And I hope that they will direct all of that energy towards our congressional delegation in order to make sure that the American jobs plan passes, in which there will be huge amounts of money for infrastructure that can be directed to a broadband project. But right now, there's not a lot of money in the coffer for broadband in the county money, in the county funds.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, but I'll try and be brief.
What's the decision-making process by which that $7.7 million will be allocated?
Honestly, it's an excellent question that we are literally working out now. And John said another thing I thought was very interesting, and I want to listen to that, and I may think that when you heard MMA say is it has to go to town meeting, and I'm sitting here saying, does that mean that our budget, our elected budget? I thought that was a really interesting.
They didn't say that, but,
They actually didn't mention budget committees, but.
no, but it wasn't about counting, so.
Right, but I mean, I think that's something we need to explore. So I mean, there's really still so much unknown about the guidance and how it's going to play out. We are at this point, well, we're sort of under the gun because actually, again, Nicholas Internet Coalition has elevated the visibility of the county, you know, which is a good thing, and forced people like me to actually show up at select board meetings, things like that, and to talk about the county, and to talk about what our needs are, and try and create that dialogue, because in an ideal world, and I might want to come back to it, well, if you guys invite me back to actually have a conversation about, you know, how the county can serve the town and what those needs are. And we still are trying to form internal conversations between our departments about it. I mean, I did sort of walk up to the sheriff and say, okay, just how much of this, what percentage of this do you think you will need? I mean, is that all of it?
All of it, right? That's what I'd have said.
Well, but and unfortunately, the state has actually, and this is rumbling around through the state offices, that they're basically saying, oh my God, what's gonna happen to all this county money in New England, where local control resides. Los Angeles, health is under the LA County system, so we have this unique situation, and so both the states and the municipalities are saying the counties are insignificant, we just want their money. We're getting letters from municipalities saying, we just want a portion of the money, just give us the cash. I'm not suggesting we do that, but I consider it an actual wonderful opportunity to start a dialogue between the municipalities, between our state representatives, and internally to find out really what are our priorities. So I welcome any feedback.
Great. Thank you. Okay, town meeting prep.
Sorry, I haven't finished.
It's all right.
The new chair, any suggestions on where they might come from and how we're gonna get there?
I don't have any chairs.
I don't know what happened, I don't know where they came from last year or how they magically appeared in there.
I put them in the back of my pickup.
Oh, you good, where'd they come from?
Well, every chair that we had here went,
Yeah,
and I also brought chairs from the American Legion down in St. George.
I mean, we have, total.
Well, we had 7 good
We had
question.
77 voters in the meeting last year.
There's a lot of people standing though.
2 years ago.
I'd be willing to talk to People's United Methodist Church about borrowing some. I have 24 at the library of the folding variety.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
that's what I'm talking
Sherry,
about,
did
these metal
you
ones.
get a count of what, you know, we have 30 in here.
well, I have 30
Yeah.
chairs set up, but
Yeah,
some
but
of them,
not folded.
they're not all folding.
You don't wanna lug these on.
Yeah, but there's more folding chairs out there downstairs.
Yeah, around the Lions table.
Yeah.
Would
Yeah,
you
we
like
took
me
all of
to
those
ask for
last time.
50?
Sorry, Penny?
Would you like me to ask to borrow 50 additional chairs from people?
Sure. Thank you.
I'll do that.
John, aren't there chairs at the community center?
ASAP, in case they say no.
There's a whole,
What about the community?
there's St. Smithside Community Center.
When they have a church. They have a- I don't have any contacts there.
I can ask, I think John
John.
Levinson.
Oh, yeah.
But once we find a place where we can get chairs, how are we gonna transport?
And lots of trucks.
Probably like you did last time.
So we're gonna
Everybody
stick
will
them on the
pick
side of the road on the day and say, hey, go now.
Well, now we gotta clear them out of there that night. We gotta make arrangements to bring them back to where they.
As far as,
They didn't make us do that last time. We put them on
The agreement said we had to clear it out by.
I know, but I'm not sure that's real.
Do they have chairs there?
And we folded them all up and we stacked them. But we didn't take them out the next day.
Well,
Obviously that,
did we have permission from the airport to do that, or did we just do
I
it?
don't think we asked.
Forgive me.
If you're getting them for free, from 3 or 4 sources, do you need to label them so?
That would be a very good idea.
Here's your.
Because they look an awful lot alike.
We're just taking the best ones and take them back to Bruce.
Yeah.
I think that all eyes are marked as DFD.
Yeah.
And
On the bottom.
and
Yeah.
my black exercise patent chairs, I can slap a library label on them. And I'm not sure about the church, but maybe they let me take a Sharpie and just put
When we stacked them
See,
after the
let's
meeting
see.
last time. No.
Where's the
Category.
How much do they cost per chair? Does anybody have a clue?
It depends, they can be pricey,
What's
30 bucks a piece. The patent ones I bought were 17 at Ocean State Job Lot.
you're not gonna get any help from me, because I'm going to Lisa's wedding tomorrow, and I'm not coming back until Tuesday afternoon.
And I'm staying out of this too. I volunteered for too many things already. And lugging chairs is not one.
If the church agrees, I will take responsibility for moving the library and the church.
Penny.
And
Those are the ones from here.
You'll move the ones from here and I will take care of the
Oh, Penny.
it'll get it to me.
There you go. Gotta do this, right?
If he needs help, I'll help him.
Yeah,
Hi, guy.
you can load it up.
Does he know how much we appreciate it? No.
I just figured out that sometimes when Penny takes responsibility, she's the commanding officer and Arthur actually does the work. Okay.
Oh, I know.
That's what's like in my house.
I was gonna say, that sounds like it works in my house. Is
We'll
that the
also
norm?
need 3 tables over there. I don't know, what do you need? I was,
Good idea.
I was there last year, but I wasn't involved last year.
Can we just
We
take,
took this exactly
Right, we could take
this.
these.
make these
Just
3
take
tables?
2 or 3?
I think three's
Okay.
enough.
I'll volunteer to do that. I'll take these 3 tables. Forget how.
You had tables at the front.
Right.
And
And
a
a
table at the
table
back.
to register the, check
register
the vote voters.
Yeah.
Well, we got another one over there. We can take 4.
Well, didn't Phil have one where he checked people in?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
Sandra just
So we can
said.
take 4.
And last year we had mass, we had all kinds of things on another table.
We do not have to disinfect anymore.
No.
Okay.
Good.
Um,
So the county dropped that?
Yep.
Great.
I asked Jeremy today, and he did say he would come help set up and break down.
He did last year,
Yeah.
or last time he dealt with us.
the,
They were very accommodating actually,
the AV guy.
for the county to, to.
Oh, the sound guy?
Yeah.
Jeff Parker?
Yeah.
Yes, he's gonna set up around 1.
Oh, okay, I was just gonna say, he's been known to be late.
Oh, well, he said he was gonna set up around 1, doesn't mean he will be
Sure.
on time to come back.
Well, that's.
Do we actually need him now, where we don't have to be 6 feet apart and, you know, use the
You
whole
can't
room?
hear, you gotta have the PA system.
And the acoustics aren't that good.
Just a lot of money for it. I mean, people can now squeeze up in the front rows.
True.
Now we're talking like $700 bucks.
$700, and if you want a video, it's 400 extra.
We don't need a video.
That's kind of what I thought.
All right. I don't know. years with no PA.
A different room,
True.
much different.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Penny.
even though it's Tuesday, it's okay if we close at 5 so that we can all.
Absolutely.
get over there.
Yeah, but make sure you post it and probably send it out in the listserv and the website. Has the warrant got the actual correct warrant, the final warrant? I saw Walter, I thought you referenced in an email that it was gonna be mailed, but that wasn't mailed, was it?
No, I didn't.
I thought you said to Lynn Milton that it would be mailed in an email or something like that. Maybe you meant
No.
email.
I can.
I mean,
Oh, you did, okay. You've done that to me before. You used the word mail for email. So, but has the warrant got out on the listserv?
No, but I can put it on.
Well, I think you should, and also call to the attention that this now includes 35 and 36, which weren't in the draft town meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it on the website?
No, I don't think it's on the website.
No.
I'll put it there too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, no,
More is better.
yeah, more is better.
because you've really expanded that list from what I see.
Yes, I got 5 more to add, but I haven't added yet.
yeah, she has the sign up sheet. out
Yeah,
there.
and they're actually asking people, do you want to be on the list? Which I think is great.
Okay,
When do you want to move, Chair? Is there any reason you can't move them earlier in the day? Tuesday?
I don't think so. I just ask Jeremy to let us in or,
Well, you can load it in the truck.
yeah,
It takes time to get them all.
yeah,
Also, because I can drive right in the hangar over there now.
okay.
thank you, Jan.
Whatever works in your schedule.
So,
I'd say your last helpful act, but we know that we're gonna be coming back to you for years and years for other things.
so I can get the tables around 5 then?
Yeah.
So you won't be here.
We can put them up in the entryway.
Okay.
Could you come a little early?
Actually, I was thinking, I was gonna back right up to this door if you want.
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have Leslie do it.
Oh,
Well, Penny volunteered, all right.
Doesn't work.
All right, okay, for the third or fourth consecutive meeting, the local option to vote for the sale of beer, wine, and spirits is on this agenda. What action do we have to take?
We have to
Because
schedule,
doesn't the town have to vote on this?
yeah, at a referendum.
can we do it in November?
I think we were gonna wait. Meeting, I noticed.
Well, I think there should be a referendum in November, right? Are there any bond questions or?
We have until July of 2022, July 1st, 2022.
So there'll definitely be a next referendum either in November or next. But I guess the question is, do we want to remove those exceptions? I'm in favor of that.
As am I. And we do have 2 venues going through the planning board process. Might benefit from the restrictions.
And they'd probably be prohibited right now.
I think so.
I wasn't really prepared to deal with it tonight, but, so I actually would like to table it again, but want to actually deal with it next time and vote on it and just schedule it for the next referendum?
Yes.
Okay.
Your next, okay, we're gonna see your next meeting is gonna be busy because you're getting your appointments.
Yeah,
But
well, we can put it off to the following one. I just don't want to lose track of it.
Yeah.
You know,
I would move that we table it.
I'll second.
You want it to the August meeting, regularly scheduled August. Select board meeting.
We're having a special meeting on July 20th, right, with Rob, mill rate guy.
July 20th. Yes, no, Didn't have a time for it, but it got on it.
It's an evening meeting, longest.
Right.
So 6.
Yeah, I did have it in 20th, okay.
Why don't we do it then? Agenda, do item agenda.
I move we table it until the 20th of July.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yeah, and Terry, you remember, do that, you remember it?
Okay, correspondence.
You skipped over the update on this basketball court project. Were you gonna go back to it?
I believe it, right?
I'm sorry. You're right. John?
The week is, we have a donation.
Do.
We need to accept.
Yeah, I don't recall who it was, Terry.
Molly Harvey.
Molly Harvey.
100?
I move that we accept a donation of $100 from Molly Harvey for the tennis basketball court improvement.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? And you have correspondence from Doug Beck.
Yeah, and some other updates. I sent the correspondence out from Doug Beck to you folks as well as the 4 or 5 people in the little working group, basically saying that still hasn't heard anything from the feds, but he has no reason to believe we're not going to be approved for our amended grant application. But it's going to take some time still, and that's sort of the only update I got there. I did want to tell you that a couple of things have been going on. The little working group of myself and Penny and Ed Modell and Gail Gallant and Rich Norman have met 2 or 3 times as recently as Tuesday. We had this county meeting, that's right. And we have come up with some thoughts and suggestions to try to maximize this funding. But before I go there, I have been, actually Leslie and I have been buying vinegar and combining it with salt and water and pouring it in the cracks out there, as the gentleman suggested from the resurfacing company, to kill the weeds in the cracks, because that will do further damage to the cracks. And most everything is dead out there at this point. So I think the working group is recommending a couple of things: that the court that's closest to us, the tennis court that's closest to us, we don't put the net up and keep it closed. That's really cracked. The cracks are a little uneven. It's probably a tripping liability. The court, the other way, there's one bad crack in it, but it's kind of up near the net and it sort of runs parallel to the net. So we're hoping to get a couple of volunteers to go out there and literally with a spoon, dig out the now dead vegetation in there and fill that crack with crusher dust, something like that. Sand at a minimum, maybe even like a mixed sackcrete, although we want to talk first. And then try to get them and put the net up and get that court open. And also, Gail Gallant has priced out a couple of pickleball nets. They're $250 for 2 of them, and our plan would be to use some of the money in the recreation fund to buy those and put them in the plastic case that the generator used to be in down at the library that's not being used. Yes, okay, 12 cents for the year. And then put a combination lock on it, and then when people want to use those nets, they could have the combination open and put it back, and then we could at least get some activity going on one of the courts out there in the basketball court is fine. So that's sort of the short-term thing. The long-term, we would like to talk to Doug Beck. The original grant application went in to resurface the tennis courts and the basketball court, which is with this little painted sand mix. The basketball court has always been just bituminous concrete. It's never had this fine surface on it. And our opinion is it doesn't need to be. And we think it's about 10 grand for this little painted surface on there. We think we should see if Doug Beck would allow us to sort of repurpose that money and used, and when we fix the cracks in the tennis courts to lay down membrane, which will not solve the problem, but will help the problem. So we would like to approach Doug regarding that repurposing. Did price out what it would take to repave the basketball court, but that was like $12,000 or $13,000. So that was out of the question. But we do think that in the basketball court, we could simply either like a tar with sand mix in it or something, and fix, lack of a better word, fill up the cracks. Which don't really appear to be subsurface cracks, just sort of with pavement that kind of was originally abutted, and they sort of opened up a little bit and rounded cracks, if you will. So that's our plan, and I just wanted to bring that to you folks, and I assume there's no objection. I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of what we're thinking and planning both in the short term and the long term. So questions or comments or?
When you reference the recreation budget for you, the pickleball, what were you?
Well,
I didn't bring my budgets.
Yeah, there's, I don't have it, there's $450 in there for, I think it was earmarked for removing this or something.
Okay.
Like that. And there's $750, it's not earmarked for anything, it just says tennis courts or something like that.
So it doesn't run afoul of Doug Beck saying that don't spend any money on this project because.
No, this should simply be pickleball nets, and there's been some interest, and Gail is sort of, and it would allow that one tennis court that we opened to be a dual purpose have two pickleball courts, if you will, where the nets could come down and it'd still be a tennis court, and we could get some activity out there this year. Oh, because the other thing is, I kind of neglected to mention is, even if we get the grant, the two likely bidders to do this are booked through the year. So we're talking, we would recommend to put this off bid in the winter and do it for next year. The repairs to the crack and resurfacing.
And the $10,000 that's in the
Would have to
the assigned fund.
Yeah.
Well,
no, you could just state it, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you could just state it, yeah. And unless we did it in spring, so. The group, Ed wasn't able to make the meeting Monday, but we sort of regrouped and kind of everybody said, yeah, this is the path we should take. And that's where
I just want to mention, I did the original grant application when Owen was still last year, just on the basis of repurposing area. I want to applaud John in particular for being really creative about approaching these. How to, get rid of the vegetation. We didn't think through any of that when we did the original grant application. Helpful to have John's experience with this.
Thank you both.
Yeah, I mean, what really needs to be done with the tennis court is it needs to be dug up, refilled in, compacted, and resurfaced. But you're talking $200,000. Okay, so that's what we're going to proceed with that plan. Hearing no objection.
Correspondence. We have some. Paul said there was no need to respond. You saw that, right? Yeah. So just wanted to get it in front of us. I responded to Linda Milton. And there was one other.
Those are the only two I have.
Who's the other?
Another email.
Well, that's what I thought, Walter, in your
Sitting on the table.
response to Linda, I thought that's where you said that tomorrow. We already mentioned that.
Right.
Okay. Linda's was advocating that we support the Midcoast Internet Coalition. I mean, just summarize it. very broadly.
Yeah, this,
I saw your response.
some ancient thing from Matt Siegel.
Yeah, I don't know, Terry said it just appeared here.
Yeah, it was just laying on the table.
Well, the event that he's talking about has gone past, I think. And he's got other things on his mind now. He just got elected to the select board in Camden. All right, we have warrants to review.
And all signed. And that's it. You check the we're all signed.
Can I ask you a question about the warrant, Terry? I see a payment to Aflac. I assume that's something that's deducted from.
It's the ambulance, they have this 3 ambulance people have it deducted from their.
Okay, so it's not town money, it's just
No,
deduction from this.
deduction.
Okay, that's what I see.
What's to sign?
Yep.
Any reports tonight?
No, I didn't really get a chance with the election of Sylvia note. I didn't get a chance to really look at.
It's
the
okay,
way
I just
wanted.
want to be sure that.
Ambulance billings, if they keep on track, will exceed the forecast, as will excise.
Oh, you know, I don't need to do anything.
That's all. Like I said, that's a run rate continues.
Terry, on the payroll, I don't see any pay to, Terry Brackett. Oh, there it is, sorry. For 2 weeks, correct?
Yep.
So we're paying him 26. That was 20.
I thought it was 21.
You say 126, almost 12.
Those are the bank stuff.
So in either event, he's putting quite a few hours in. I mean, if it's 21, he's putting in even more.
Would you remind me again, what is Machias charging us? And what are the eggs? They're paying us like 0.5%.
And I'm not sure, we haven't borrowed from them yet. That's our next step. It always took our money, and that will be the next step, but. People pay the, prepay for that. Might people pay the.
right, future meetings, do we want to, yeah, we're going into executive.
All the excitement's over.
Pardon?
You're not scheduling any.
Yeah, we are.
Well, we already have some scheduled. right?
Right, we have the 20th of July. We do the 13th as well. Was that, no?
Well, we have one on the 29th of June, right?
Right. So the next second Tuesday would be August 10th.
We have one for the 13th and the 20th in July, right?
That's what I remember, and I don't.
That's what I have on my calendar.
You do, okay, good.
We have the 13th too.
Yeah.
13th and the 20th, I have. The 13th would be our regular meeting, and the 20th is just,
Right.
well, now it's a two item.
Now the two items. So August
Do
10th.
do we want to wait till we have our
So,
new
yeah.
member, whoever that may be, until we schedule?
Sure.
Yeah.
We-
Huh?
How do you know you need to be here?
Well, because
They
he's
mess up his line plan.
assuming that it's the one nominated candidate.
Sandra?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Harry, you got all the warrants, right? Oh, no, these.
So, because Terry and I are new to this YouTube thing, we thought that we would just end the Zoom stream. Live stream here, and it wouldn't be on YouTube at the end of the meeting. But we figured that was safer than trying to come back after executive session.
Is anybody on, you know?
I don't, I was, not able to do the YouTube at the same time. But why don't you tell them that you're gonna take off and I'll end this meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a move that we enter executive session pursuant to Title I MRSA, Section 4056A, to discuss a personnel matter.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
So make